Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Helium One Global Annual General Meeting. Throughout this recorded meeting, attendees online will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Just simply type in your questions at any time and press send. The company may not be in a position, given the attendance on today's meeting online. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it's appropriate to do so. I'd now like to hand over to Non-Executive Chairman Ian Stalker. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to everyone here at the meeting. Welcome, good to see you, and good to see the interest in the company. And I understand we have 408 interested parties at the end of the line listening to us as well, so welcome to them. I thought I would just start because of the news that came out this morning and because of my accent. I want to make it very clear that I am the non-executive chairman of Helium One, and I will not be standing for the First Minister's position in Scotland going forward. So I'm dedicated to the role that I have. And having said that, welcome. It's good to see everyone here. There's a lot going on in our company. Some of the changes we've made recently we'll be talking about as we go through the meeting at the moment. But it's really good. I think it's important that people hear where we're at, where we're going, and how we're going to get there. So let me start by saying again, welcome. I want to introduce to you my left-hand side. And for those who see the screen, perhaps it's not my left-hand side, but it's certainly Lorna Blaze here, who's the new CEO. Absolutely delighted to welcome her to the team, and the team is with me. Nigel, James, Russell, and Sarah are all here. So the full board minus one guy, Robin Birchall, who couldn't make it. He's overseas at the moment. The full team are here to give, I think what you will appreciate is a level of support to Lorna, because we really believe that with Lorna on board now, we have turned a corner in many ways in terms of the way the company is moving forward. And so I'd like to welcome Lorna on our own behalf and on behalf of everyone here. We will run through the formal part of the business. That shouldn't take too long, I hope. And then we'll enter into sort of question and answer session. With the help of Tavistock, we've got a lot of questions that we can condense because a lot are very similar, and we'll try and answer them in a more larger way, in a more open way. And then at the end, questions can be open here, particularly to the audience in front of me. If there's any questions you want, we'll do our best to answer them going forward. So having said that, I will officially open the meeting. Again, say welcome to the annual general meeting of Helium One Global Limited. I'm Ian Stalker, the non-executive chairman of the company, and I will act as chairman for the purposes of this AGM meeting. The quorum necessary to constitute this AGM is present, and I therefore declare this meeting open. With your permission, I propose that the notice of the annual general meeting and each of the proposed resolutions set out in the notice as taken as read. Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Prior to putting the resolutions to the meeting, I would like to advise those in attendance that Resolution 5 has been withdrawn and therefore will not be put to the meeting. That was at the discretion of the board. We felt it was inappropriate in actual fact to move forward with that one. So for the moment, it's in relation to Resolutions 1 to 4 that I would like to draw your attention to the following proxies that have been received by the company in relation to each resolution. And perhaps just for clarity at the meeting here today, I know some of you have come up out of interest, but you don't have the authority to vote your shares at the meeting, but one or two present do have the authority, and they are more than welcome to vote at the appropriate time. So for Resolution 1, voted in favour are almost 80 million shares. Voting against was 651,000, with 560 withheld. Resolution 2, 79 million voted in favour, 705 against. Resolution 3, 78 million, 1.5 million against, 594 withheld, and Resolution 4, which we'll go through in detail, 78 million voted in favour and 1.5 against, with 594,000 withheld. There'll be an opportunity for questions from the floor in relation to each resolution, and I would be grateful if shareholders would state their names and if a corporate representative the name of the company they are representing when we get to that resolution. So, Resolution 1, ladies and gentlemen. Resolution 1 is an ordinary resolution to receive and consider the accounts of the company for the financial period ended the 30th of June 2022, together with the reports of the directors of the company and the auditor of the company on those accounts. Are there any questions relating to this particular resolution? There being no questions, I now propose to put it to the vote of the meeting. The resolution as set out in item 1 of the notice convening the meeting of ordinary resolution. Will those in favour kindly raise their hands? Those against? Thank you. In that case, I can declare that Resolution 1 has been carried as an ordinary resolution. Resolution 2 is an ordinary resolution to reappoint PKF Littlejohn LLP as auditors of the company to hold office from the conclusion of this meeting until the conclusion of the next annual general meeting, and to authorise the board through the audit committee to fix its remuneration. Are there any questions relating to this particular resolution? There being no questions, I now propose to put this vote to the meeting the resolution set out in item 2 in the notice, convening this meeting as an ordinary resolution. Will those in favour kindly raise their hands? Those against? Once again, thank you very much. I declare resolution 2 carried as an ordinary resolution by the requisite majority. Resolution 3. Resolution 3 is an ordinary resolution to re-elect as a director of the company Mr. James Smith, who's in my left-hand side here. James retires by rotation in accordance with the company's Articles of Association, and being eligible, Mr. Smith offers himself for re-election. Is there any questions regarding this resolution? There being no questions, I now propose to put it to the vote of the meeting. Will those in favour kindly raise their hands for the re-election of James Smith? Thank you. Anyone against? Based on that, and of course I should have said earlier, the votes have already been received. That is also passed, and resolution 3 is therefore carried as an ordinary resolution. And finally, resolution 4 is to re-elect as the director of the company Mr. Russell Swartz, who's on my right-hand side, who also retires by rotation, and in accordance with the company's Articles of Association is eligible. He offers himself for re-election. Guess there'll be no questions tonight based on the fact we have no other questions. It's a straightforward resolution. So I'll put this to the meeting. Those in favour, kindly raise their hands. Those against? Thank you very much. In that case, I declare resolution 4 passed, and therefore Mr. Russell Swartz is re-elected. That concludes, I'm glad to say, the formal part of the business. But I think the more interesting part is about to unfold now, which is the presentation that Lorna is going to give us. And then I think, equally importantly, the question and answer session, because quite rightly, I think a lot of people will have some questions about how we're doing and where we're going. And it's important we address them as adequately as we can. So having finished the formal part, let me hand over to Lorna and say good luck with your presentation, Lorna.
Thank you. Thanks, Ian. Thank you to the board today for joining, and to you in the room, as well as those of you that have joined online remotely. Thanks, Ian, for introducing me. I'm, as announced, the new CEO of HELIUM. I'm delighted to be here. Delighted to be here today to welcome and speak to those of you in front of us and address questions that have been pre-submitted online. So background about myself, I've spent over 17 years in the oil and gas industry. I've worked in successful exploration and appraisal projects across Africa, primarily East Africa and Central Africa. Most recently, I've been involved with successful oil projects in the Ternate Basin in Chad, and prior to that, I was involved with the Lake Albert project in Uganda with Tullow, and also involved with the South Locature wells in Kenya. Most recently, I spent 2 years at HELIUM as a geologist. That's my background. I've been heavily embedded in the team. I know the project incredibly well. Any bit of data we have, I can guarantee you that I have looked at and interrogated and looked at again. If you ask me any technical questions, I will be thrilled to answer them. However, that is now shifting. I need to adapt myself and switch hats quite quickly, and now lead this company to a pathway of success. I've got a solid board around me, and I want to reassure you all here today, and again those online, that despite the recent setbacks and the management changes, I am here fully committed to drive this company forward and to make this project a success. This is just the formalities that we have to show. So over the past 12 months, we've integrated as much of the subsurface data that we've acquired as possible to gain a greater understanding of the prospectivity that we currently have in the Rukwa project. And not just Rukwa, although Rukwa is our priority, and that's where we must drill this year, we've also got our other basins in Eyasi and Balangida, and I want to, again, assure you that there has been a lot of work going on behind the scenes to progress the work programme in both of these basins as well. We have an experienced management team in place. Despite the recent changes, we've got low capex for the development. It's a clean, low carbon, sustainable resource that we are chasing. Our recent December fundraise enabled us to raise just under £10 million at 5p, which has left us incredibly well funded for this upcoming drilling campaign this year. As much as I'd love to sit here today and tell you that we have signed a rig contract, unfortunately we haven't, but I can assure you that in the last few weeks when we've been changing out our management, that the ball has not been dropped. The team have been working incredibly hard, talking to multiple drilling contractors, working negotiations, and we're currently in talks with several contractors and trying to move this along as quickly as possible. I am as frustrated as I'm sure you are, and I just want to give you the confidence that this is something that is our absolute priority and will continue to be a priority until we sign that contract. This is a familiar slide to many of you now. I'm sure many of you in the room are familiar with the commodity of helium. Those that aren't, it has very unique properties. I probably don't need to take you all through them today, but you can see them on the slide. It will be publicly available after this session. But essentially the message here is that the demand for helium is still incredibly high, and that demand is not slowing down anytime soon. The price of helium is continuing to rocket. Some of you may have been aware that at the end of last year, NASA signed a contract for 1.2 BCF at a price of over $900 per MCF. Spot pricing is in excess of that, but the price is rising, the demand is rising, and we need to find more of it. So the demand, again, this slide, I appreciate you've seen before. The key message here is that the supply is in short supply. Sorry, the demand is high and the supply is low. A lot of that has been triggered behind the closure of the Federal Reserve in the US back in 2019. Obviously, the geopolitical situations in Russia and Ukraine are adding to this with the withdrawal of the production from the Amur plant in Russia, also antagonizing that future supply. So for us, being a primary helium explorer, we're not exploring for hydrocarbons with helium as a byproduct. We are primarily helium. We have data in the ground now that proves to us that we're looking at a primary helium play in Tanzania, and we need to move forward with this project as swiftly and as quickly as we can. So we currently operate across 3 basins in Tanzania, operating just under 3,000 square kilometers of licensed PLs. At the end of last year, we actually relinquished quite a substantial amount of those PLs across the Rukwa Basin, and that was a strategic decision based on areas that were of lower prospectivity. The majority of these were on the lake. We feel that that's an area that we don't want to be focusing our efforts. It's high cost, exploring offshore, and the data we have was informing us that there were potentially lower areas of prospectivity. And in turn, that's saved us nearly, just over $300,000 of licensing fees. So we're continually looking at ways to bring down our cost and save money where we can. The 2021 drilling campaign saw us drill the Tai-1 well. The results of that well showed multiple helium shows throughout the stratigraphy, from surface down to basement. And that has enabled us to de-risk the helium play in this basin. However, as you're all aware, the complications of that hole and the rig that we used, essentially, we left, unfortunately, with unfinished business. We couldn't acquire the logs that we needed in order to confirm whether we had a discovery or not. And we need to return to that prospect, drill it properly with a conventional rig, get the right logs, and hopefully move forward and pave the way with some success. It's despite acquiring additional seismic last year, end of 2021, we then processed it, interpreted at the beginning of last year. Tai still stacks up as being our largest, lowest risk prospect in our portfolio. So on that note, for the next few months, the focus has to be re-drilling Tai. Since the beginning of last year, we have processed and interpreted that 220 line kilometers of 2D seismic. We acquired an ERT survey that was also interpreted, processed, and integrated with our 2D seismic. We've had a team up in the Balangida Basin doing field work, going out to sample and ground truth seeps that were picked up previously on the multispectral satellite spectroscopy work that we had done. We've carried out an extensive regional study across all of our basins. The back end of last year, we commissioned GTEC, who are a very well-known gravity and magnetics expert here in the UK, well regarded in the oil and gas industry, to complete an extensive GravMag survey across the Yasi and Balangida regions. And that's going to enable myself and the team to pave the work programme forward to identify areas in both of these basins where we have potential prospectivity and can look to acquiring additional data in those areas later this year. So behind the scenes, a lot has been going on, and as I said a few slides back, it's not just focusing on drilling time. That is our priority, but we also have to be mindful of the other potential assets we have in front of us, and that we need to be moving along in parallel as well to make this company successful. Now, the biggest question I know you're all thinking is what is happening with the rig. You'll see on this timeline that we've spent many months going through rig selections, going through contracts, losing rigs, appointing the wrong rigs, etc., etc. It's not straightforward. It's a long process. I'm not going to sit here and say to you it's as easy as hiring a car and you can just go in, select one, sign on the line and walk away. It's a very complex process, and a process we have to get right. So despite losing the Exalo rig back at the beginning of January, and the ongoing legal complications with the Clough rig that we had identified prior to that in Kenya, we now have a couple of other rigs on the table that are technically more capable. They're within the right region. They will be available in the timeframe we are looking at, and most importantly, they are within our budget. It's a forever moving market. It's very fluid, and it changes weekly, sometimes daily. My role as a CEO now moving forward is to keep you informed as best as possible as and when that situation changes, and our priority now is to get something secured and have a contract. Once we have that contract in place, we will then RNS that and announce that to the market. When we sign that contract, we would be looking at a 2-month mobilisation with a view to then spud the well around mid Q3. We're aiming for an August spud and to stay within the dry season. However, as I say, until that contract is actually signed, I cannot cement those timeframes with you. But please be assured that we are doing everything in our power to make that happen sooner rather than later. This slide, again, you have seen before, but this is just to reiterate the integration of the phase 2 seismic that was acquired back end of 2021 post-drill. We've now evaluated that. We have a much better understanding of the tie structure. And as a result of that, we're confident that our new well that will drill into the structure will be well positioned to target multiple closures from the tertiary lake bed section, in the shallow section, down through the Karoo to the basement. You'll see on the seismic section on the right-hand side where the helium shows were encountered in that well, the blue circles on the well section. And it's clear that there were helium shows throughout the section. It wasn't just restricted to the shallow or the deep. And we also didn't actually get to the basement. And the basement has always been a target for us. So that's a third target there that we hope to encounter additional helium when we re-drill this prospect. And thinking ahead, planning ahead, our engineering team have been very active in the well planning side, and to sort of plan for that success, we're also planning to run a 7-inch casing from surface, and so that will enable us in the success case to come back and perforate the well and carry out a well test without the need to drill another well in the structure and put in unnecessary holes into that structure. So this is probably, I appreciate, the most pressing slide in the pack, and this is critical to our success moving forward this year. I don't want to distract from the purpose of today's AGM, but it's important to me and the board that we keep our shareholders as well informed and up to date as possible. So as I keep saying, I can assure you that is not a ball that we're not dropping. The team are working around the clock to make this happen as soon as possible. It's a very dynamic rig market, as I say, and the options that are available to us today were not the options that were available to us 6 months ago, even a few weeks ago. But all I can say today is that once that contract is signed and is on the table, then you will be the first to know. Something else we're considering as well, you see that bottom note on this slide, is there's potential to engage with another operator in the region to consider rig sharing options. Again, that would be our way of bringing costs down, particularly on the mobilisation and demobilising stage of the operations. Something we're not ruling out, but it has to be suitable to us and ensure that we can still commit to fulfil our commitments in drilling that well in the time frame we need to this year. So a couple of slides on our additional projects that I'll just go through for the remainder of the presentation. This is an updated image of the Thai prospect in the Brookwood area. You can see the white circle on the map on the right-hand side illustrates where the Thai well was drilled. That's a Bouvet gravity map. And essentially, those red areas are showing those basement highs that are deeply buried in the basin. And it stands out pretty clearly even to the untrained eye. As I say, still stacks up as our lowest risk, largest prospect in our portfolio. We've integrated the ERT survey. We're undertaking some other studies to evaluate, for example, rock physics, and using the seismic to evaluate rock properties to help us predict future prospectivity using the seismic we have. We've been engaging with our civils team in country. We have a contract with them ready to go. Again, once the rig contract signed, we will mobilise our civils team to start preparing the pad at site. Recently, we sent a team out to the site to do a drone survey. We did this as a stakeholder engagement exercise as well. It's a heavily farmed area. There's a large farm community out there, and this is people's livelihoods. There's a lot of crops that are grown and sold to market. So for us, it's crucial that whatever work we do at the Thai site has to be restored accordingly. And there's a big push on there on our, working safely in the environment, our ESG side of things, and being fully compliant when it comes to environmental rules and regulations. So this slide just highlights some of that community engagement that we're doing out in the field, continuing to build those relationships. And the drone image there on the bottom right just illustrates the type of topography we're looking at the site. It's very accessible, it's flat, it's not too low lying, and we'll ensure that whichever landholders are affected during these operations are appropriately engaged with and compensated. So this slide just highlights some of the additional data that was acquired last year. The map on the left illustrates the phase 1 survey highlighted by these yellow lines down in the southern corner. This is one of the surface helium seeps you can see represented by the blue triangles in the bottom right-hand corner. And then the red lines to the north of that map highlight where the phase 2 seismic was acquired. So we were trying to extend along the Thai High and look for similar sort of analogue closures in the region. The blue dashed lines highlight where we acquired the ERT survey. The purpose of that survey was to try and better understand any shallow gas accumulations that may have occurred, given that we encountered quite a robust helium show at 70 meters in Taiwan. All of that data has now been integrated with the team. We've integrated it into the seismic. You see that image on the left-hand side in the middle there, illustrating that. And again, some of the photographs showing the engagement out at site with the local community, employing local people, and pushing our social engagement side. Next slide. So for Balangida, we have one PL, one prospecting license, just under 260 square kilometres, which we renewed last year. It was up for renewal in September, and we plowed ahead with that renewal process. There are surface helium seeps up there with up to 10.6% helium. Off the back of the multispectral satellite study that we did, we sent up a field team to go and ground truth some of these anomalies and observe for new seeps that we may not have previously sampled. That was a piece of work that was done in March last year, 2022. We also used this area to feed into our regional gravity magnetic study. The team have just been integrating quite extensively. The results of that work are excellent. I'm really pleased that we pushed this piece of work through, and we've had a huge amount of interesting data that's come back out of that. And I'm keen now as a CEO to push the results of that work forward and start pushing ahead with a future exploration program here. Similarly, on ASI, similar story. We had 2 of the 3 licenses up for renewal in September, which we went ahead and renewed. There are also surface helium seeps in the space that we know about, and we took this area and lumped it into the regional gravity magnetics study with the Balangida region. Again, very intriguing results, is probably the right word to use, and I'm confident that the results of that work will lead us to some highly ranked prospective areas to further explore later this year off the back of the success of the Thai well. We obviously need to preserve our cash and focus that onto the drilling program, but in a success case, we will certainly be moving forward with these other areas as well. Last couple of slides. We're very active on the ESG front. I've already mentioned about some of the social engagement, community engagement projects that are occurring in the field. These photographs on the left-hand side of this slide attempt to show some of those meetings. We have a community liaison officer in country who's regularly out visiting the field area and meeting with village chairmen and village elders and keeping them abreast of our developments and projects. Top right-hand picture there shows one of our CLOs meeting with one of the police commanders in the region as well. And whenever we've gone out and done drilling ops or seismic ops, ERT, we've always met with the local communities and kept them informed of what we're going out there to achieve. We've also supported or funded community projects with new buildings, making repairs on schools, upgrades, etc. We've sourced the material and the locals have used those materials to do those projects. We're also building relationships with the University of Dar es Salaam. They've been involved with HELIUM-1 from the beginning and have brought a lot to the table. A lot of expertise with their in-house geochemists. I'm off to Tanzania the week after next, and I look forward to sort of developing those relationships with UDSM and involving them more moving forward. We've recently sponsored some master's projects with them in terms of awards for the students that have done their projects, and I look forward to continuing that support in country. And then penultimate slide in summary is really just to be here today, to have the opportunity to speak with you and give you the confidence moving forward that although I can't unfortunately sit here and tell you that we have a signed contract, it is absolutely at the forefront of all of our minds right now, and the whole entire team is committed to making that happen. And the rest is probably self-explanatory. You're familiar with us as an organisation, and I look forward to speaking with you all moving forward.
Thank you, Lorna. I'm sure you'll appreciate that took a bit of time and effort to get ready, and I hope you also appreciate that, in my opinion, was an absolutely fantastic presentation. Thank you very much. Just before I get into the question and answer session, I just wanted to make a few sort of general comments, because you know, I've been associated with HELIUM-1 for longer than the rest of the team here. I've been associated both professionally and financially. And the reason I got associated with it right at the beginning is because the prospect and the opportunity was outstanding. And in that regard, that still remains paramount. We really have a lot more knowledge about what we're now about to approach, i.e. the Thai prospect, and a lot more confidence that when we get there this time, we will have success. Nothing is ever 100% guaranteed, but we have done a lot of work. And I'd also like to pay tribute to some of the guys who've supported us over the years, because some of you may not know, but as a private company, we raised money at different times throughout our history, and we raised money at quite expensive levels. by comparison to what we did in the listing back in 2021. And one of the gentlemen that's here, I'm delighted to acknowledge, is Jeff Clark, who's been with us for a long while. He's been a great supporter and comes from, well, he's worked in that part of the world in Tanzania, and I'm delighted to welcome, because he's right from the beginning, he's been solid. And he's not the only one. He was here today and he made it work, the trip up well, and I wanted just to acknowledge his presence on behalf of the board. But there's a lot of people who come in right at the beginning and have stuck with us because this opportunity is still one of the best in the helium space. And I wanted you to know that, you know, the other thing I wanted to mention, because it's like the elephant in the room to some extent, we have changed the CEO. It wasn't because we were desperately keen to change the CEO. We just felt that in order to drive this company forward, the conditions had changed sufficiently that a new CEO was required. Vigor and strength and enthusiasm. And I have to add this word particularly, the professionalism that we needed in this company. And I think from the presentation, I certainly get a great deal of comfort knowing the professionalism associated with it is certainly more than we had in the past. That doesn't mean to say we did a bad job in the past, not at all. But going forward, I feel a lot more confident with the team that's gone about us. So I wanted just to set those tone, and then I'll open up now for the question and answer session. And what we did with the help of Tavistock, who are here on my left-hand side, they went through a range of questions. As I mentioned at the beginning, I think there's 408 interested parties on this particular meeting. That is more than my local football club gets for a weekly game. So it shows you the level of interest that's here. But there's a lot, and the first one starts with questions covering the rig, the drilling, contract, the timeline, and what they call the consortium. Far be it from me to try and answer this. I'm going to hand it back over to Lorna. I think she has already addressed a lot of it, but I think it's worthwhile reinforcing some of these comments now.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully that short presentation has answered the majority of these. You'll see in the slide that I've marked Q3 for the spud of that well. That obviously is making a lot of assumptions, not legal, primarily the contract, but also the negotiations that are ongoing with our current rig providers. We endeavour to sign that soon, but I'm not going to sit here and give you a date on that because that would be giving you false information. But rest assured, once it's in place, we will announce an RNS on that as soon as we can. You saw on my slide about the site preparations, the contracts with the civils team are poised, they're ready to go, we've engaged with them, they know what's expected, and again, once that contract's signed, we will then give them the nod to get out to the field and start preparing the pad at site. There's a question, I think, about future drilling at Thai. So at the moment, the fundraise we did in December is enough to drill one well. Thereafter would be triggered by the results of this well. There may be potential for a 1+1, which we would certainly consider obviously in a success case. But right now, the funding we have in place would just be to secure that one well. The idea of this consortium to spread those mobilisation costs is certainly something that is on our radar. I'm speaking with another operator about how we can pave the way forward to mutually benefit both organisations on that, and the team are very much across that too. But it would be a small consortium. We're not talking about a large number of companies here, and it has to benefit both parties equally. And nor do we want those negotiations and discussions to delay what we are trying to achieve. We have to sort of protect ourselves in that sense.
Is that it? All right, thanks. No, I think you've also mentioned earlier that the opportunity maybe of some other people piggybacking on our rig coming into Tanzania, and there's an opportunity of cost savings there. And if there's cost savings, obviously the cost savings made will all be directed to our exploration and field activities. Because the next question that comes up is an interesting one to me anyway. Funding, cash, burn rate, and salaries. We did raise £10 million last year, and therefore we're well funded, I think, as Lorna has already highlighted. Company's burn rate, we run a very tight ship, and you would expect, I'm going off script here, you'd expect nothing less from someone with my accent. I get up at, just to give you an example of it, and it's not for any medals that I want awarded here today, gentlemen and ladies, But I got up at 4 o'clock this morning, drove into Lisbon, got a Ryanair flight over, and arrived here about 10 o'clock. Drove in here, and I can assure you, it was not business class that I flew. And for this 72-year-old geriatric, that was quite a challenge. And if I can do it, you can imagine I use the same yardstick for the rest of the company. We are extremely tight on the way we run our cash burn. We recognise that raising the money from equity and from private investors is not easy, and they want to see it used in the right way, and it is. I can assure you of that. We're more than happy to, at any time, talk about it and detail it in more effort. But the money goes in. Some of my colleagues here have made the comment, lifestyle commentary. Where do they get that from? Because our directors here are not the best paid in the EU market, let me assure you of that. But what we have done is build up a team of people that has allowed Lorna and her knowledge to grow so significantly in this project. Where we sit now when it comes to drilling is so much more assured than we previously were. And those people do cost money. They do. Not aggressive, not over the top, they cost. But one of the tasks we've asked Lorna to do as she moves forward is obviously to re-look, now that we're at this stage of drilling, just what our new structure should be. Because we're not in the business of just paying for people's salaries if there's no job to be done. So I can assure you, going forward, we are very conscious of our burn rate, our salaries, and the cash. And I hope that describes it adequately for most of you listening in and here today. The board and management team, there's been a lot of changes in the last year, making it much more oil and gas focused. Again, just because I've been here longer than most of them, I can tell you when we started off, I had no oil and gas background. I really had no knowledge of helium. I just thought it was a great project and it was well worthwhile looking at and investing in. And that's where I take my hat off to the likes of Jeff Clark. He helped me understand a lot about the helium business at that time. Subsequently, we brought in James Smith, who has done another wonderful job educating me and made sure that we brought in the right kind of people like Lorna and Russell, and Sarah was there from the beginning, and Nigel. We've just put a very solid board together, are now much more aware of how the oil and gas industry works and how difficult and how challenging it can be, but how to make it work irrespective of those challenges. And that gives me a lot of confidence going forward. This concept, if I just give you a 2-minute liturgy on the hard rock, for us, getting a drill rig isn't a problem in a hard rock environment. You just get, there's lots of them, Geodrill or whoever, you just get a contract. This concept of the amount of work that has to go in was brand new to us, all of us, until we got the right team in place. But now that we have it in place, I feel so much more comforted when I go to bed at night, knowing the right people are looking after the right things. Over and above Lorna, when Lorna, I think she suggested in her presentation, moved up from the technical in particular into this corporate role of CEO, still a lot of technical work, because unless the project's right, you can talk to the clouds come in about how good everything is. Unless the project runs right, it's just nonsense talk. And that's why Lorna is so much better. She has that technical ability and can convert it in the corporate environment to things that people understand and understand how we're going to get there. And that's, for me, a huge step forward. With her moving up, we brought in someone else to replace her, a guy called Kai. I won't even try and pronounce his second name because I'm dead to screw it up. But he's appointed now. And so we really have a solid team and a really good management team that I think, and I think the board agrees with, I know the board agrees with, can deliver a successful 2023 drilling campaign. So I think we've got the boat back on track, the ship back on track. I think we're heading in the right direction. Management and ownership, comments made are understood. I mentioned to you I've been a shareholder from the beginning, and I won't tell you because he's a friend of mine who convinced me to come in, I think, at 22 cents at that particular time, and he still remains a friend despite that fact, and we're trading now at 5.5p. But we have got skin in the game. We have a desire to make this a success. All of us put money in at different times. All of us related to just how much we can afford or whatever the case might be. And we will be looking to buy more shares, I can assure you of that. But not just hiding it and not saying I'm doing it for lip service. We're doing it because we honestly believe in this project. And I think giving Lorna the opportunity is just such a great step forward that I'm looking forward to the next 6 months, to be perfectly frank. So look, I've covered the questions that were raised here. I know there's a lot more, and we've a limited time, and really I should really address it to the floor. Hopefully we've addressed most of them. If we haven't, to the guys on the ether, if you like, please get a hold of us. Lorna, myself, James, Nigel, Russell, Sarah are all more than welcome. We don't inundate us with too many because there's only so many hours in a day, but we would be very happy to engage, talk to you, and get you back enthused with us. So having said that, I'll hand over to the floor. If there's any questions, please fire away and we'll do our best to answer them. Well, that's great. That's very good. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, so David gave the assurance that there won't be another raise before the next drill campaign. Are you willing to say the same again now?
Look, you've probably seen the James Bond movie. In my accent, you'll know why I'm going to quote this, but you never say never. But right now, there is no intention of another raise. We think we have sufficient money to do it. We have no intention of further dilution. And remember what I said, I am a shareholder. Dilution is toxic to me. I know why we've invested. It wasn't just for a PhD in gas engineering. It was to make a return on investment for all our investors. So I think we have enough money. I think the board believes we have enough money. We will not waste it. So right now, there is no intention of raising any more funds.
Will your relationship with Baker Hughes continue as it was before, or are they still?
Lauren?
Yeah, so our priority is to continue to use Baker with this role going forward. They're obviously not going to wait around forever for us, so we're keeping them across our situation and keeping them abreast of the situation when we're going to sign up the rig. But obviously that LOI was signed last year, and our preference would still be to use them for third-party services. So it's just another example of another relationship we're continuing to build and keep another plate to keep spinning, essentially.
Are we expecting MOUs or are we expecting contracts for rigs?
Our priority will be a contract. I don't want to sit here and tell the investors that we have an MOU because it's meaningless. It's not legally binding. I want to be able to sit here and tell investors that we have a contract.
I was embarrassed after the raise. I really was. I'm old enough now, it's not easy to get embarrassed. So you can imagine how I felt, and therefore you must have felt it as well. It was not a nice situation. And we had to take some action, and it wasn't the easiest of actions to take, but we did for the right reasons. Okay, if there's nothing else, look, thanks very much. I really appreciate everyone's time, particularly.
There are two
questions. Sure, go for it.
Online. One is, what are the plans post-discovery or commercialization and other partners, asset sales in the future? Future further exploration.
Lorna touched on it about the other interesting ground that we have in that part of Tanzania, the Yasin Balangida. And I think there's a lot to be gained in doing more work there, and that will, I think, bring rewards to us. As regards the next step after discovery, I'd love to wax lyrical about that, but I really want to get the discovery under my belt first, and I'm sure all of us at the table think the same way. Then we can go about it, but make no mistake, if there's a discovery made, there will be no lack of attention on HELIUM-1. Lorna set out the tone of the helium market. I mean, the commentary she read about NASA, it just tells you just how vital a particular commodity this is and how such demand it is. So I'm sure going forward, but we'll do one step at a time. We've learned our lesson to some extent in that regard.
And that is it. That hasn't been answered.
All right, well, again, thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you to the board of HELIUM-1 for updating all shareholders, both in person and online. Could I please ask attendees online not to close this session, as we'll now automatically redirect you for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the company can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the board. On behalf of the board of HELIUM-1 Global, we'd like to thank you for attending today's annual general meeting. I wish you all a very pleasant afternoon.